Oh, the referee got in the way. You can see that. She did get hit in the head. She's making a case for herself.
Caitlin Clark just broke 5 world records in a single night. Not 5 records for Team USA. Not 5 records in women's basketball. 5 records across all of international basketball history, men and women going back decades. And then 24 hours later, her own coach stood at a microphone and basically told the world she didn't want that to happen again. That's not me reading between the lines. That's what the press conference showed. That's what the box score showed. And that's what 4 straight possessions of film showed clear as day. If you watched that Puerto Rico game and felt like something was off, you were right. And today, we're going to walk through every single piece of evidence one by one. No speculation, no emotion, just what happened on the court and what was said on camera. Stay until the end of this video, and here's exactly what you're going to find out. First, the specific numbers that explain why what happened in the Puerto Rico game was not random and not explainable as bad luck. Second, the exact moment at the press conference that most channels completely glossed over, but it's actually the single clearest piece of evidence in this entire story. And third, why what's happening to Clark right now goes way beyond basketball. It's a story about what it truly costs to break a mold and why the people trying hardest to slow her down are actually doing the complete opposite of what they intend. Quick note before we dive in. Everything you're about to hear is based on publicly available information, verified reports, and our own film and data breakdown. This channel is not affiliated with Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, or the WNBA. We are not here to take sides. We are here to look at what the data actually says and follow where it leads. All opinions expressed are for analysis and informational purposes only. We respect every player in this conversation. All right, let's go. To understand why the Puerto Rico game matters so much, you first have to understand exactly what Clark did the night before. Because if you don't feel the full weight of those numbers, you will not feel the full weight of what came next. Clark came off the bench. She was not starting. She walked onto that floor as a reserve player in her very first senior national team appearance ever. And in 19 minutes, just 19 minutes, she put up 17 points, 12 assists, 0 turnovers, 4 of 5 from three-point range, and 5 of 5 from the free throw line. Now, let me slow down on the assists number for a second, because this is exactly where this story gets historic. FIBA, the International Basketball Federation, had to go back through decades of records from every single country on the planet just to figure out what she had just done. And what they found was 5 separate world records, all broken in the same game by the same player on her very first night in international competition. Record 1. Most assists by any player in a Team USA senior national team debut, men or women. Nobody in the entire history of USA basketball had ever walked into their very first game and facilitated at that level. Not once. Clark did it in under 20 minutes off the bench. Record 2. Most assists in any senior national team debut across all countries. She didn't just top the USA list, she topped the entire world. Every country, every player, every debut in FIBA history. She topped all of them on her first try. Record 3. Second most assists in FIBA qualifying tournament history, full stop. 1 game in, and she's already in the conversation with the greatest single-game assist performances this tournament has ever produced. Record 4. Most assists by any bench player in FIBA history, men or women. She wasn't even starting. She came off the bench and still did something no bench player in international basketball history had ever done before. And record 5. 8 assists in the first half alone with 0 turnovers, the highest first-half assist total in qualifying game history. She did all of that before halftime, and she did not give the ball away a single time. Not once. Now, here's what makes those numbers even more extraordinary than they look on paper. Clark didn't rack up 12 assists by holding the ball running isolation plays and hunting her own offense. She was reading the floor in real time, finding cutters 2 steps before they got open, pulling defenders out to the arc with the constant threat of her three-pointer and threading passes through gaps that most players in this league don't even see until the ball is already in a teammate's hands. Ryan Howard had a massive scoring night in that game, and a significant portion of those points came directly from Clark's reads and decisions. Clark was on the floor for 19 minutes and made the players around her look like a completely different team. This is the part of her playmaking that gets lost in the highlight reels and the scoring debates. It's not just that she makes the pass, it's that she sees the pass 3 full movements before it even exists as an option. She reads off-ball movement with her peripheral vision while keeping eye contact with the defender and then delivers the ball in the opposite direction at the exact moment the window opens. That is not something you teach in a film session. That is basketball IQ at a level very few players in the history of this sport have ever shown. And FIBA knew exactly what they were watching. They had a dedicated camera operator following Clark for the entire event, not just during live play, but between possessions, during timeouts, during warm-ups, during dead balls. They made a production decision that she was the face of this event, and the cameras confirmed it before a single official statement was made. So you would expect the next game to build on all of that, right? More minutes, more trust, more opportunity. You just watched your player break 5 world records in front of a global audience. You ride that momentum, you lean into it, you give her the ball and let her keep doing exactly what she just did. Instead, something very different happened when Team USA took the floor against Puerto Rico. And honestly, the footage is uncomfortable to watch if you saw the Sénégal game the night before because the contrast is that sharp. Cara Lawson put out Chelsea Gray Paige Beckers, Kelsey Plum Monique Billings, and Kiki Irian. No Caitlin Clark. And the offense showed it immediately. Pace dropped. Ball movement slowed. The starting unit was grinding against Puerto Rico's physical defense, struggling to generate clean looks. The free-flowing offense from the night before nearly gone. Then Clark came in with the second unit, and the tempo shifted right away. Faster transitions, better reads, more ball movement. The difference was visible in real time right there while it was happening. But here is the part I need you to really sit with, because this is where the on-court evidence becomes genuinely impossible to explain away. Clark was moving without the ball, creating angles, reading the defense, putting herself in spots where one pass would turn into an easy basket. She was open. And Angel Reese had the ball. First time it happened, you give the benefit of the doubt. Basketball moves fast. Maybe the timing was slightly off, maybe the look wasn't quite there. You let it go. Second time, same situation. Clark open, Reese goes the other direction and takes a harder shot than she needed to. You stretch the benefit of the doubt one more time. Third time, Clark is open. Reese forces her own play into a tighter window than the situation called for when an easy pass to Clark was right there. That is a decision, not a mistake. Fourth time, the pattern is fully formed. And here is the detail almost nobody is talking about. When Clark passed to Reese and Reese failed with the possession, Clark did not stop moving, did not pull back, did not stop trusting. The respect and trust in those possessions flowed in one direction only. Then there was the bump. Reese made contact with Clark with no ball, no contest, no tactical reason. Just contact in a space where contact had no explanation. Clips were spreading across social media within hours because anyone watching could see it was not accidental. Now, here's the detail from that game that most people missed completely. And this one actually tells you more about Clark's presence and gravitational pull than anything that happened between the lines on the court. The Puerto Rico head coach's daughter was sitting in the stands holding a fan sign for Caitlin Clark. The daughter of the woman sitting on the opposing bench, whose entire job that night was to game plan against Clark and stop her, was in that arena cheering for her. Let that fully land. Clark's pull doesn't just cross team lines, it crosses national lines. It reaches the families of the coaches trying to beat her. You cannot manufacture that. That is simply what happens when someone at her level walks into a building. And the building itself told the exact same story. That arena was packed. Not decent attendance for a midweek qualifier, not a respectable crowd, packed lined up outside before doors opened buzzing from the very first warm-up minute, carrying genuine playoff energy from start to finish. People were there specifically because Caitlin Clark was in that building. International sports media outlets that never cover women's basketball were filing stories about this qualifier because she was in it. Journalists from countries without a WNBA team were writing about this tournament. That is not something you manufacture. But while the fans were there for Clark and the cameras were locked onto Clark and the opposing coach's own child was holding up her name on a handmade sign in the crowd, the people who actually controlled her playing time were operating on a completely different set of priorities entirely. And here is where we get to the press conference. Because this is the part that most channels either missed completely or skimmed right past it. And it is actually the most revealing window into everything that was happening around Clark throughout this tournament. Most coaches are disciplined at press conferences. They use measured language. They give safe answers that prioritize team concepts and avoid handing anyone a quotable moment to work with later. Cara Lawson was not disciplined after the Puerto Rico game. She described her approach to rotations and lineups using the phrase fact-finding mode. On the surface, that is a reasonable thing to say during a qualifying round. You are testing combinations. You are building towards something bigger. That framing taken alone is understandable. But then she went further. She said she wanted everyone to shine, not just Caitlin Clark. Read those 5 words carefully. Not just Caitlin Clark. Wanting multiple players to contribute is completely standard coaching philosophy. Nobody watching this video is arguing against that principle. The problem is not the philosophy in the abstract. The problem is the timing and the specific name being used. You stand at that microphone and say those exact words, not just Clark, the day after one of your players just broke 5 world records in 19 minutes off the bench on the international stage. At that precise moment, that statement is no longer a general philosophy about team basketball. It becomes a targeted statement about one specific player. It becomes a public signal about whose spotlight you are actively working to redistribute and reduce. And then a reporter asked her directly, "What happened with Clark in the Puerto Rico game? How did she perform? What are you going to build on from what she showed?" Lawson did not answer. She pivoted to something else. She moved the conversation in a different direction entirely. For a coach who watched her player make international history less than 24 hours earlier, refusing to address that player's game when directly asked is not neutral. It is a statement delivered through silence. I want to stop here and be completely straight with you because this is the point in the video where I need to say what I actually think, rather than simply narrating events and leaving the conclusions to you. When you watch both games back-to-back, and then sit through the press conference, not a summary, not someone else's description, but the actual footage, it is very hard to see coincidence. The 4 look-offs align too precisely with the language Lawson chose. The starting lineup decision, the everyone to shine, comment, the refusal to answer about Clark directly, these do not exist in isolation. Together, they form a picture. Now I will give you the complete counter-argument because you absolutely deserve the full picture. Lawson has a defensible position that qualifying rounds are exactly the right stage to experiment with rotation combinations before the real pressure games begin. Keeping a player on the bench after a strong single performance is not automatically a punishment or a message. It can simply be standard roster evaluation. And some of Reese's look-offs may genuinely have been poor reads in the moment rather than calculated decisions. Basketball happens at full speed and not every missed pass carries deliberate intent. But 4 times is a pattern. The press conference is a pattern. And the measurable change in offensive tempo when Clark is on versus off the floor that is not ambiguous. That is what the data shows. Here is what makes all of this far bigger than one difficult game at a FIBA qualifier. It proves something about Clark's impact that her supporters always understood, but that the Puerto Rico game put on display with extraordinary clarity for anyone who was still uncertain. When Clark is limited and excluded from the offense, the team around her suffers immediately and visibly. When she is free to play her actual game without artificial restriction, the offense does not get slightly more productive. It does not gradually improve. It becomes historically elite. 5 world records in a single night, elite. And the entire reason for that comes down to spacing and defensive gravity. When Clark is genuinely involved in the offense, opposing defenders simply cannot afford to sit comfortably on other players. They have to respect her three-point shooting threat from virtually anywhere on the court at every single moment. That constant, required attention forces the defense to spread horizontally across the entire floor. That spreading creates open driving lanes to the basket. It creates cleaner angles for cutters coming off screens. It opens mid-range windows and corner opportunities that would not exist in a compressed defensive shell. And it generates exactly the kind of clean, high-percentage transition opportunities that made the Sénégal game look almost effortless for everyone involved. When Clark is on the court, but deliberately excluded from offensive involvement, when teammates consistently choose not to find her, that gravitational pressure disappears completely and immediately. The defense stops accounting for her at all. They can collapse freely on every drive. They can double the post player at will. They can pack the paint without any concern about leaving a shooter open from deep. And suddenly, the entire offensive system becomes measurably easier for the defense to manage, because the most dangerous and unpredictable variable has been voluntarily removed from the equation by the offense itself. That is not a theory or a narrative framework. That is just how basketball spacing works. And here is the detail that should settle any remaining uncertainty about Clark's true value in this tournament. Puerto Rico, a team that Team USA defeated by roughly 30 points, built their entire defensive game plan specifically and deliberately around stopping Caitlin Clark. They deployed a box-and-one hybrid defense targeting her individually. They dedicated that level of strategic preparation and defensive attention to a single player on the opposing roster. A team that lost by 30 points still gave Clark more institutional respect and defensive credit than her own coaching staff did. Let that sit. And after all of it, the bench decision, 4 straight look-offs, the bump, the press conference, a defense built from scratch to stop her. Clark still made Team USA better in every single minute she was on the floor. She did not shrink. She did not force shots to make a point. She kept moving, kept reading, kept making the players around her better whether they acknowledged it or not. That is the real story. Not that someone tried to slow her down. The story is that it did not work. Now look forward. Indiana, 2026. That situation is a completely different world from what happened at that FIBA qualifier. Clark is not walking into a locker room full of veterans competing for shots and attention. She is not coming off the bench while someone else's unit builds chemistry. She is not navigating egos from 8 different franchises. She is the system. The entire offensive structure in Indianapolis is built around what she does best: pushing pace, finding cutters, pulling defenders out to the arc, and delivering passes through windows that close before most players even see them. Nobody in Indianapolis is standing at a press conference talking about making sure someone else shines too. And here is what this tournament actually revealed. The Puerto Rico game was not a warning sign. It was a demonstration with a control group built in. It showed with clinical clarity what happens when Clark is underused, which means we now know exactly what happens when she is used right. The Sénégal game was right. 5 records, 12 assists, 0 turnovers, the whole offense clicking in under 20 minutes. That is the baseline. The people who worked hardest to limit her in Puerto Rico made the strongest case for why Indianapolis is where she belongs. Beyond the basketball, and I mean this genuinely, Clark's story teaches something that goes way past sports. When a system seems designed to hold you back and the crowd still fills the arena for you, and the opposing coach's family cheers your name, and the cameras find you even during dead balls, that is not luck. That is what happens when the quality of the work outlasts every attempt to minimize it. Clark did not respond to the look-offs by forcing shots. She did not demand a conversation about the bench decision. She responded the only way she ever does, by continuing to be exactly who she is, a player who makes everyone around her better, including the ones choosing not to give her the chance. That is not a sports story. That is a blueprint for how to operate under real pressure. In a world that wanted her perfect from day one and loaded her with expectations, no single player should carry. Her real superpower is not the logo three-pointer or the behind-the-back pass. It is the willingness to keep doing the right thing at full effort, even when everything around her is working against her. You now have 2 games of film to compare, side by side. One where the system let her play, one where it worked against her, and the difference is the clearest argument anyone could make for what Caitlin Clark brings to any team willing to use her right. Now, if Caitlin Clark has ever given you a moment that made you jump completely off your couch, drop a basketball emoji in the comments right now. Let's see how many people from every corner of the world are riding with her. And tell me what you honestly think. Does Clark get treated fairly by the league, by the media, and by the players and coaches around her? Drop your real unfiltered take below. We read every single comment and we do not delete opinions. All sides of this conversation. Let it happen. Every comment you leave helps this story reach more sports fans who deserve to hear the complete picture, not just the version the headlines choose to tell. If you believe the truth actually matters, make some noise right now. Now you know the real story of what happened at this FIBA qualifier. But there is a player whose journey makes this entire controversy look like just the opening act. I already made that video. You do not want to miss it. It is right there on your screen.